Once upon a time, in the grand halls of a glittering mansion, under chandeliers that sparkled like captured stars, a moment unfolded that no one in the room would ever forget. And if you are watching this right now, I have just one request. Stay with me till the very last second, because the twist at the end will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about class, race, and respect. It all began when a wealthy millionaire named Richard held a lavish ball for his son's engagement. The hall was filled with the wealthiest families in the city, nobles, politicians, business magnates, all dressed in gowns stitched with gold threads, tuxedos cut from the finest Italian fabric, and pearls that glimmered like frozen drops of the moon. Everyone was drinking champagne and whispering, but in the corner, almost invisible to the crowd, was a young black maid named Althea. She worked in silence, balancing trays of glasses, clearing plates, moving quietly like a shadow so no one would notice her. But fate, as always, has its strange ways of pulling the most invisible into the brightest spotlight. Richard, the millionaire host, a man who never hid his arrogance, had always been known to make jokes at the expense of the people who served him. And that night, after a few too many glasses of wine, his eyes landed on Althea. He smirked, looked at the room, and with a booming voice that made everyone pause, he declared, "If this maid can dance the waltz without embarrassing herself, I'll let her marry my son." The room erupted in cruel laughter. Some guests gasped in fake shock, others clapped at the joke. His son, Thomas, who was kind-hearted and gentle, immediately grew pale. He didn't agree with his father's cruel humor, but he also didn't have the courage to speak up against him, not yet. Althea froze in place, tray trembling in her hands. Her heart pounded. The humiliation was sharp. Guests' eyes burned into her, expecting her to run away, to drop her head, to accept that she was nothing more than a servant. Richard, the millionaire, leaned back in his chair, proud of himself, laughing at what he thought was just a harmless joke. But then, Althea did something no one expected. She placed the tray on the table, straightened her back, and stepped into the center of the ballroom. The laughter dimmed into silence. The music shifted as the orchestra, sensing drama, instinctively began to play a slow waltz. Every guest leaned in, every camera phone raised, and in that moment, a maid who was supposed to be invisible became the center of the universe. What no one in that hall knew was that before she became a maid, Althea had been something extraordinary, a professional dancer. Not just any dancer, but a national ballroom champion who had once toured Europe and won trophies taller than herself. Life had dealt her cruel blows. Her mother fell sick, bills piled up, and she had given up her career to take whatever work she could find. That's how she ended up scrubbing floors and serving champagne in the millionaire's mansion. But dancing? Dancing was still in her blood. Her body remembered every step, every twirl, every rhythm. And so, when she took that first step into the center of the floor, the air changed. Guests who had been sneering moments earlier now held their breath. Richard's smirk faltered, and then Althea began to dance. She floated, she spun, she glided with a grace that seemed impossible. Her hands were delicate, her feet precise, her posture regal. The ballroom that had mocked her now watched in stunned silence as she moved with the kind of beauty only years of discipline and passion could create. Whispers spread through the crowd. "Is she trained? She's incredible. How is a maid dancing like this?" Even the musicians' eyes widened, following her movements, adjusting their tempo to her command. It wasn't just a dance. It was a declaration. A declaration that she was more than the uniform she wore, more than the cruel labels whispered behind her back, more than the color of her skin. She was an artist. She was power. She was everything they said she could never be. Thomas, the millionaire's son, felt his chest tighten. He had seen Althea before, serving quietly, always polite, always overlooked. But now he saw her fully. truly. And his heart did something it had never done before. It fell. Richard, however, clenched his jaw. His attempt to humiliate her had backfired, and his pride, his ego, his prejudice began to boil. The applause began slowly. One guest clapped, then another, until the whole hall erupted into thunderous cheers. The crowd rose to their feet, women fanning themselves, men whistling, and all of them forgetting, for a moment, the cruel joke that had started it all. They weren't watching a maid. They were watching a queen reclaim her crown. When the dance ended, Althea didn't bow. She simply straightened, her eyes meeting Richard's with a calm fierceness. The millionaire, red-faced, forced a laugh and muttered something about it being just entertainment. But his voice shook. His son Thomas, however, crossed the floor, took Althea's hand, and kissed it. Gasps echoed around the room. That small act was louder than any applause. It was rebellion. It was love. It was the start of something no one in that mansion had predicted. Over the weeks that followed, Thomas sought Althea out again and again. He learned about her past, her sacrifices, her dreams, and slowly the two grew close. But of course, the world is never kind when love crosses boundaries of wealth, class, and race. Richard forbade it. He threatened to cut Thomas off. He insulted Althea, calling her unworthy, calling her names no one should ever have to hear. And yet, Thomas didn't back down. "Father," he said one night, "you told a joke that night, but that joke showed me who truly deserves my respect. Not the people laughing in this hall, but the woman you tried to humiliate." Richard slammed his fist, but Thomas stood tall. It was a war of generations, of values, of prejudice versus progress. And when society found out, when the press discovered that a maid had danced her way into the heart of a millionaire's son, the world exploded with opinions. Some ridiculed, some cheered, some doubted. But one thing no one could deny was that Althea's courage had shaken the very foundation of the millionaire's empire. And here, the twist that you've been waiting for, when Althea finally stepped back into the competitive world of dance, with Thomas by her side cheering her from the front row, she didn't just compete, she won. She rose once again to become a champion, proving to everyone that no matter how society tries to silence you, your light will always find a way to shine. And the millionaire? Even he, after watching the world praise the very woman he mocked, was forced to bow his head. Not out of kindness, but out of the undeniable truth that respect is not bought with money, but earned through strength, grace, and resilience. So now I ask you, the viewers, what would you have done that night if you were in Althea's shoes? Would you have stayed silent, or would you have stepped into the spotlight and shown the world your power? Comment below, because I want to hear your thoughts. Was it courage? Was it destiny? Or was it simply justice? And remember, sometimes the greatest revolutions begin with a single dance step.